AI and book writing. Are you scared or excited? So I know this is a really controversial topic, but it's also very topical as well, which is why I'm covering it. And I know in the writing book world and the fantasy book world, it's a very controversial thing. Is AI going to replace graphic designers? Is AI going to replace editors? Ultimately, is AI going to replace writers? I think AI has just really expanded the horizon of what's possible. And if I just talk about what my situation is, I just launched my blog recently, if you want to check it out, and the link below. And it just wouldn't have been possible without AI. I've used AI apart from the writing, basically everything else. So the graphic designs, putting up the images, even helping it guide me in terms of strategies of what times to post and things like that. So, cards on the table, I'm a big AI user. So am I using AI to replace people? As I've said, I'm using AI for graphics. I'm using AI basically for everything except the writing. Well, I would say no, and the reason why is the following. When I'm using AI, it's not a choice of shall I use AI or shall I use people? It's like, shall I do this or shall I not? Because I don't have the budget to hire people. I don't have the budget to get a graphic designer. I don't have the budget at the moment to get an editor, although I'm working on that because I think that's a really important thing at the end, but more on that later. And so if I didn't have the AI, I don't think I'd have launched the blog. If I didn't have the AI, I definitely wouldn't have been able to make it look as attractive and bring some of the ideas that I had in my head out onto the page and give you an insight as to what these characters look like, what these places look like. And with someone with no budget, I think AI has been incredible for that. And I think it's a fantastic tool to be able to use. So I wanted to just talk about my personal principles with AI. So I don't use AI to write prose. And my reason for this is because I am an author, I'm a writer, and I just feel that I need to keep my own authentic voice when I'm writing. The way that I structure things, the way that I describe things, the kind of speech, it needs to be authentic. That's not to say that I don't use AI for editing and taking some words perhaps that are a bit clunky, and then AI will provide a cool alternative and I can take a look at that. Sometimes I'll take it, sometimes I won't. But it's the same with constructive criticism from beta readers as well. I've had many times where I've been called out by sometimes my beta readers, been like, this is worded a bit weird, you should word it a bit differently, shouldn't you have used this word instead of that, all the kind of mistakes that I made. I promise I'm a good writer, but all the mistakes that you made when you're working on something and you just can't see the wood through the trees. I think it's really good to be able to use AI to use it for editing, and it's not something that takes away from what I'm doing and my authenticity, but actually it's doing something that also humans have done, and I've taken a lot more constructive criticism and corrections from beta readers and other readers than I have done from AI. But what if you are an author who wants to use AI? Now, I know a lot of people may say if you use AI, you're not authentic. If you use AI in writing, you're not a writer. AI has written that. I personally would disagree because I think it really depends how you use AI. So let me give you an example. My daughter wanted a story, and I thought I would use AI to create her a story. So I said to her, what kind of things do you want in the story? And she said unicorns, she said fairies. She's 6 years old, so she said she wanted something about the toilet, what a 6-year-old comes up with. And so I told her, put this prompt into AI, and I said, make a story for a 6-year-old about fairies, about unicorns, about princesses, and include a toilet as well. And then AI came up with it, and it was a quite funny story. So did I write that? No, absolutely not. I just gave the prompt to AI. I just threw a few random ideas out, and it was the AI that tied it together and made it into a story. So I have no credit for that. It's like, me going up to George Lucas years ago and saying, hey, I think it would be cool for you to do a film with spaceships and, magical powers and battles with magic swords. And then when he comes up with Star Wars saying, yeah, I deserve credit. No, I don't. I didn't do any of the writing. I didn't do any of the creation. And it's the same with that example. But If you use AI with a really strong prompt saying, I want to do this, you give it a lot of information, and then when it comes out with that, you then take the work, edit it, really put your personal stamp on it. I don't see why that shouldn't be considered your work, or at least having co-written something with AI. So let me give you another example as well. So as I said, I don't use AI to write prose, but I do use it for poetry and songwriting, simply because I'm not a songwriter and I'm not a poet, or at least not a very good one. I kind of suck at writing poetry. But it was an important thing for me to write an inspirational song in one of my books. And so I wanted to be about a monument in my fictional world, Remithia. And I said, I want you to write it in a fantasy fictional folkloric style and give me a really good song based on that, with this kind of inspiration. So the first attempt that it did, it was a complete knockoff of the song. And I said, no, that's not what I wanted. I wanted something that was inspired by this, but not a complete complete rehash of the same words, the same verses and everything. So I had to put in several prompts. There was a lot of flowery language, some of which I thought was cool, but others it was just going too much. And it then, as AI kind of does, it starts hallucinating and it starts bringing in, history that I never mentioned or didn't exist. And so I really had to do a lot of editing to say, yes, this part is okay. This part is complete nonsense. So let's just take that out and let's reword this. But what's the real value there in that is that it was able to help me basically get past the writer's block. As someone who struggles with poetry, with songwriting, it was a massive help to be like, right, I've got something to work with now. I can mold this in the way that I want. I can change it up. And I was able to come up with a really good song, massively thanks to that start that AI did. But do I feel that I have the authentic right to say that I've created that? Yeah, I've definitely co-written that with AI. I would say 70 to 75% of that was me, because the idea came from me, the inspiration. I really directed it. It came out with a kind of a first draft like an assistant basically, and then I completely put my stamp on it. If you're familiar with music production, it's like someone comes up with an idea and then the music producer comes in and says, right, no, we're going to change these drums. We're going to bring in a synth bass rather than a normal bass, and we're going to bring in a piano, and then we'll put in this keyboard and we're going to take out this guitar, that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, I definitely think that I had the authentic right to say, yes, I've co-created this. So ultimately, can AI replace humans? I would say no. I'm going to do a separate video on my experience with using AI as an editor. There were some really cool things, but also some big flaws in using AI. So before I publish my book, I'm definitely going to send it to a developmental editor, because you really need those human touch, the human pair of eyes to go over it, and the human understanding to be able to get something really quality and ready for publishing. Same with graphic designers as well. I've used AI to create my book cover. You can check it out in my blog below. Actually put the whole of my chapter that I wanted to use as inspiration for the cover, but I was really pleased with the work that it had done, and I think it's like 80% there. However, there are a few details that I'd love to get changed, finalized, and so if I was to put that image into AI and give it another prompt, I don't know whether it would be able to come up with the exact same image and make the small changes that I wanted, unlike a human editor, because a human editor would be able to go in and say, yes, make this guy's hair a bit longer, change this and that, and they'll be able to do that, whereas AI might come up with something completely different and lose a lot of what I really like. So we're still going to need human graphic designers. It's just AI can give us a really good start and a good idea for then the human to come in and really put the perfecting touches on it. And the same with writers as well, because when you read some of what AI creates and the writing that it does, it can seem too flowery and basically lose that human touch. And I think it's really important, the human touch, the human authentic voice, to be able to say, this is my work, this is the way I write, this is the kind of story I tell. And can AI do that? AI has some fantastic capabilities. I've seen it already and I'm a massive fan, but there's no way, I think, that it can replace the human story, the human element of telling a story. So it'd be great to know what you think. I hope this is not too controversial, and it'd be great to know what your experiences with AI are, whether you use it or whether you don't, and if you don't, why not? Put the comments down below. I'd love to read and respond to them. I'll be making a new video about what happens when I put my book into AI and the feedback it gets. So stay tuned for that.